Before we dive in, drop a quick hi in the comments. It may seem small, but trust me, it really helps YouTube share this story with more sci-fi fans like us. I'd love to see who's watching. Sector boundary breached. Coordinates matched. We've officially crossed into Human Zone Black. The voice echoed through the command bridge of the Vraxal Rain, lead dreadnought of the Draxali 27th Fleet. Commander Urok Vadris stood tall beneath the arched canopy of the observation chamber, his 4 elongated limbs crossed behind his back. Twin ocular ridges blinked in unison as he gazed at the emptiness ahead. His voice was calm, devoid of hesitation. No gravitational distortions, no radiation anomalies, no fleet response, just empty stars and relic dust. A low, rasping reply came from the left side of the chamber. "That's what they always said," murmured Subcommander Durin Solk, the oldest of the officers on board. His grayish scales bore the dull hue of a warrior who had seen more battles than most had heard of. "You don't come back from this place." "I knew a patrol captain," Solk added, 30 years ago. Sector Black was his last jump. They found a trail of melted hull drifting through the void. Nothing else. Vadris didn't turn. Superstition. This sector has been dead for 92 cycles. No trade, no signals, no defense fleets. If humanity truly had teeth left, they would have shown them by now. "They might be hiding them," Solk said under his breath. Behind them, Lieutenant Valtik Krosh, a younger officer with obsidian-colored plating and eyes like scorched crystal, leaned over his terminal. "Telemetry clear. No mass signatures. No quantum fluctuation. Our escorts confirm this is a ghost sector." Vadris tapped his clawed finger against the edge of the tactical display. "Let the galaxy see our banners. Log the maneuver. The Draxali 27th cuts through the last border the humans pretend to guard. Let the Council talk." The fleet pushed forward, 29 ships strong. Dreadnoughts, cruisers, scout-class slicers, and 2 deep-range carriers formed a spearhead through the dark sector, engines humming with pride and impatience. This was no mere patrol. It was a show of force, a silent broadcast of power. Within 5 minutes, silence broke, without sound. "Sir, escort Sigma 9 is gone." Krosh blinked twice, slapped his console for recalibration. Nothing changed. Fal reran the sweep with shaking fingers. Same result. "She's just gone," he whispered. The report came from Communications Officer Drenik Fal, his voice clipped, focused. No explosion, no distress ping. One moment she was broadcasting standard telemetry and the next, nothing. Hard cutoff. Valtik raised his head, sharp. "Sensor glitch." "Negative," Fal replied. "Signal history confirms full integrity. No decay, like someone just snapped the line." Solk turned slowly toward the center of the room. "Vadris, no debris?" the commander asked, ignoring the older officer. Fal's hands moved across his console. "Nothing. Local scans show no particulate spread, no heat bloom. It's like she was erased." A slow vibration ran through Vadris's core. "Reroute scout slicers to triangulate the coordinates of Sigma 9's last ping. Full sensor sweep. Analyze in all spectrums. I want visual cross-check and pulse LiDAR echo." The fleet maintained formation, but tension slipped into the air like cold gas. Murmurs began in the command corridors. Krosh flicked through a dozen tactical overlays in silence. Solk stood unmoving, his gaze fixed on the blackness that refused to answer. "Still no return signal?" Vadris asked after 2 minutes. "Nothing. The ship's gone." Solk's eyes narrowed. "You're thinking black hole, anomaly, subspace shear, something exotic. But I've seen warfields, Commander. That wasn't an accident. That was extraction." "That's presumptive," Vadris said coldly. "And that presumption may keep us alive." Vadris didn't respond. Instead, he opened the fleet-wide secure channel. "All units, elevate to yellow formation. Activate point defense grids. Spread recon arrays to 110%. Continue advancement. Slow burn." Krosh paused at his station. You want to keep moving forward? Vadris finally turned from the observation pane. We do not retreat from a single missing vessel in empty space. The humans want fear to live here. We bring clarity. 15 minutes passed. 3 more ships vanished. It happened with the same surgical silence. No detonations, no electromagnetic signatures. They simply ceased. Cruiser Calthan, Destroyer Rune, Frigate Delvin, all gone, Fal said, his voice lowered to a near whisper. They were on opposite flanks. No pattern yet. Still no enemy readings, Krosh reported. Our arrays detect no emissions, no ship trails, no plasma, not even a power surge. Where were they when it happened? Sulk snapped, stepping forward now, abandoning his earlier caution. Fal brought up the holographic overlay. Calthan was in forward left screen, Rune trailing it aft. Delvin was looping rear recon. No convergence. They're not targeting the center of mass, Sulk muttered. They're unraveling the ends. Vadris paced toward the center console. Raise fleet alert to Crimson. All vessels enter evasive pattern Delta 4. Titan formation. Locked to battle group pings only. They're not attacking with ships, Sulk insisted. They're not attacking at all. They're removing. Vadris waved him off. All ships, respond with active status. Only 25 ships answered. Contact Central Command, Vadris ordered. Fal was already ahead of him. Attempted. Channels are active. No response. We're only receiving static. A deep, rasping silence filled the bridge. Krosh looked around slowly, eyes narrowed. Jamming? He asked. Fal shook his head. It doesn't feel like jamming. There's no spike, no push. The signals are just gone. Sulk's breathing deepened, just like the ships. Vadris growled low. We were promised this sector was quiet. Where is the noise? There was no answer. Nothing came. No enemy hails. No fleet declarations. No warning shots. The void remained utterly still. Only now it was watching. Have we scanned for cloaked vessels? Vadris demanded. We've tried, Krosh replied. Spectral scatter, gravimetric anomalies, subharmonic interference. Every sweep returns empty. And yet we are dying, Sulk whispered. They are killing us, and we can't even prove they exist. Retraction is not an option, Vadris growled. We hold. But the silence disagreed. Out beyond the last cruiser, something flickered, less a light than an absence of consistency. Krosh flinched at his display, recalibrated, and frowned. I've got nothing, but it blinked. Fal shook his head. There's no visual input, no signal, no trace. You can't track what isn't there. Then mark where it isn't, Vadris snapped. Plot void against void. I want data. I want a direction. Sulk's voice was low. You won't find it, Commander, because this isn't war. It's a message. Vadris turned on him. Enough. But he couldn't ignore it. The room felt smaller, like the space around them had drawn tighter, the air thinning beneath the weight of what had yet to arrive. No one spoke for a long moment. The 27th Fleet had entered the dead zone to challenge myth. They brought the most advanced tracking equipment in the quadrant. Elite crew. Weapons unmatched outside the core systems. And none of it meant anything. The next disappearance came in pairs. 2 ships, Velusk and Mektor, blinked out within the same second. Gone. Krosh's voice cracked. That was simultaneous. Fal's hands were frozen over his panel. We didn't even have time to react. These ships are armored against suns, Krosh muttered, eyes wide. And it means nothing. Sulk stepped forward again. You think they left humans behind out here to defend this silence? You're wrong. They left a warning. What warning? Vadris asked, finally facing the old officer fully. Sulk stared at him. That we should have stayed out. A long, slow alarm pulsed through the ship, not an alert. Just a reminder that the systems were working, that something still functioned. Vadris opened the fleet-wide channel. This is Commander Vadris of the Vraxall Reign. Execute defensive vector spiral. All remaining ships confirm and hold. One by one, ships checked in. 23, 22, 20, 19. Each confirmation felt like a heartbeat. And then the final tick stopped. No fire, no warning, just subtraction. Humanity had sent a message. Silence. The last signal vanished. No explosion. No echo. Just subtraction. Again. Far beyond the Draxali fleet's failing formation, orbiting silently around a dead dwarf star buried in a cloud of fractured dust, an asteroid drifted in an unnatural arc, too stable, too steady. Inside its carved-out core, beneath layers of composite rock, a clean chamber pulsed with dormant energy. Clint Simo rolled his shoulders, aligning himself into the cradle like a locked component. "Confirm, Vector," came a voice beside him, sharp, dry, Russian-accented. "Trajectory matched," Simo replied. "Gravity arc from the drift has the window open in 12 seconds." Lyudmila Pavlov nodded without looking at him. Her eyes were fixed on the prediction node, lines of data skimming past her retinas through a compact ocular HUD. From where she sat, the Draxali ship was little more than a red dot on a flat black field. It wouldn't remain there for long. The Thanatos didn't vibrate. It didn't hum, just a soft inner pulse, like a predator holding its breath. Simo shifted his body inside the command cradle, elbows tucked in, spine aligned with the linear cannon's support system. "Give me thermal core integrity," he ordered. Silva's voice crackled through the inner line, smooth and unhurried. "Cores steady at 100%. Recoil buffers primed. We'll take the push." "McMillan," Pavlov called out. "I want a second read on the command pattern from their last transition." From the corner of the chamber, Wally McMillan, broad-shouldered, dark-skinned, half his head shaved, and the other half lit by green data streams, swiped through alien glyphs projected across his console. His voice was low but confident. "They're still mirroring Vassari protocol. Draxali subcruiser logic tree, standard aggression curve, but..." He paused. But what? Pavlov didn't like gaps. "They haven't adapted since the first disappearance. Their rear flank has rotated 3 times in 60 seconds without changing formation. They're nervous, not analytical. Useful," she muttered. Simo closed one eye. His left arm reached toward the trigger cradle, hovering, not yet touching. A single sphere rotated within the Thanatos' breach core, glowing faintly blue under its kinetic sheath. Pavlov didn't glance up. 6 seconds. Outside, nothing moved. The star offered no light. The asteroid offered no heat. No one in the galaxy knew they were there. 3, 2. Simo's breathing stilled. No one else moved. "Fire." He touched the trigger. No recoil. No sound. A single projectile exited the Thanatos rail, a composite slug of depleted baryonic mass, wrapped in microfilament gyros and embedded with a gravity-stabilized sheath. It moved silently, invisible, crossing nearly 1,000,000 kilometers in under 10 seconds. Its vector was curved, not arced, not corrected, pre-calculated. At the edge of Draxali formation, a command frigate blinked once, then vanished. A faint flicker danced across the chamber walls, then was gone. No impact sound, no echo, just absence. "Confirmed," Pavlov said calmly. McMillan nodded to himself, still analyzing logs. "Target was off-sensor at the moment of impact. That's new." "Not anymore," Pavlov replied. "It's a precedent now." Simo leaned back, chest rising slowly. "That wasn't just a ship," he said. "That was the beginning." No one replied. They all knew what came next. McMillan adjusted the interface display, switching from tactical logs to archive access. Pulling Draxali fleet composition logs from the Council records. Last contact noted, 7 years ago. Fleet doctrine unchanged since the Sarlik push. Over-reliant on electronic suppression. Weak against analog disruption. They still think in straight lines. He flicked a control, overlaying symbols across the fleet map. They also underestimate atmospheric lag. Their formation was designed for clean space transitions. They're getting distortion from the dust belt around the dwarf. Simo nodded slowly. That's how we cut the first 6. They think it's a natural void. It is, Pavlov muttered, because we made it one. Silva's voice came in, quiet, measured. Weapons engineer, gravity specialist, the one who made sure each shot bent space exactly the way it needed to. Grav stabilizer drift at 0.3%. I'll recalibrate before the next shot. You've got 5 minutes, Pavlov answered. Across the silent chamber, Macmillan pulled up an encrypted dossier, an old file, one buried beneath decades of silence. Clint, he called. Simo turned his head. Macmillan tapped the display. Council log, Draxali Fleet 27. Originally formed to enforce compliance on dissident systems. Known for psychological warfare during the Skarn rebellions. Executed 17 planetary quarantines in less than 3 cycles. No survivors logged on 4 of them. Macmillan paused at that line, jaw tight. He didn't say it aloud, but the data said enough. Simo stared at the screen, unreadable. Then, and they thought this sector was empty. Pavlov stepped closer to his side. Her tone didn't change. Next shot will have drift. How much? 263,000 kilometers at time of interception. But there's a rogue moon pulling on the curve. Impact window is 9 seconds total. Lethal? Only if we thread the trajectory past the moon's second shadow. Simo rotated the controls, visualizing the path. He didn't blink. Then we thread it. Pavlov fed him the coordinates. Macmillan, what's the next logical move from their command? They're going to scatter small ships forward. Test the range. They still think it's automated. They're not panicking. Yet. Simo whispered more to himself than anyone. They will. Pavlov ran final calculations. Next shot ready in 30 seconds. Adjust for compression delta. The chamber's lighting dimmed automatically as the cannon recharged. A faint pressure shift pressed against the walls, barely noticeable. Simo locked in, exhaled, waited. This wasn't revenge. It was doctrine. He fired. The second shot had vanished just like the first. No bloom, no echo, only subtraction. But this time, the Draxali noticed. Their formation tightened. Flank ships adjusted vector alignment. Sensor nodes pulsed wider sweeps, overlapping scans in increasingly erratic patterns. The silence had stopped being empty. It had become loaded. Clint Simo didn't look up. His breathing was still metronomic, synced with Pavlov's cadence. Next vector plotted, she said. They've shifted altitude by 217 kilometers, trying to present a misaligned cross-section. Not enough, Simo muttered. The Thanatos' firing solution ticked down. Another slug locked into place. This one was heavier, optimized for rotational torque. 3 seconds, Pavlov said. Stabilizers holding? Simo asked. Drift at 0.5, Silva answered from the maintenance alcove. He was crouched over the primary compensator column, tightening a pressure shunt with a manual torque wrench. Sweat glistened across his forehead. Simo fired. The third Draxali cruiser died before its sensor log registered the trajectory. A full-body penetration, right through the command core. No flame, no escape. Next, Pavlov said, already plotting the fourth shot. They're shifting again, Macmillan noted. First sign of non-scripted adaptation. Sloppy? Getting there. They're testing our rhythm. Let them, Simo said. Pavlov's next calculation was tighter. Trajectory requires 98 milliseconds of delay due to orbital tilt. Minor compensation. Send it, Simo replied. The fourth slug crossed the void and slammed into its mark. Another kill. The formation flickered, literally. One of the Draxali forward probes sent out a wideband pulse, as if searching for something behind the fleet. Okay, Macmillan said, zooming in on their telemetry. That one pinged its own rear formation. They're not trying to find us anymore. They're trying to figure out if we're even real. Silva grunted. Thanatos is registering increased gyro strain. 3 consecutive high-angle shots in rotation. I'll have to resynchronize the main ring before the 6th. Do it before the 5th, Simo said without turning. Pavlov noticed a shift in Macmillan's interface. Wally, what's that? He enlarged the tactical grid. One of their bulk freighters just changed pattern, drifting sideways. Internal systems still powered. Simo locked eyes on it through his interface. Too slow for evasion. Maybe it's carrying wounded, Pavlov said. Target it, Simo said. Pavlov hesitated. It's not going for cover. No evasive maneuvers, just drifting. Simo didn't respond. He fired. The projectile struck the freighter's lateral cargo section, not the core. Instead of igniting, the hull vented in a controlled rupture. Pressure bled out. Emergency pods deployed like dying petals. Silence held for a long moment. Pavlov didn't speak. She simply recalibrated. Macmillan broke the stillness. They didn't know whether to defend or run. That hesitation, that was real. Simo's hands rested motionless over the trigger cradle. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. For just a second, his breathing fell out of sync. Silva checked the compensator again. Minor misalignment on recoil vectors. Nothing critical, but the dispersal cone is widening. I'm compensating manually. Keep it within half a degree, Pavlov said. It'll hold, he answered. Macmillan swiped through new Draxali data. They're fragmenting. Same ship just received 2 contradictory commands. One to hold, one to retreat. It hesitated, and that's all we needed. Command unification is broken, Pavlov stated. They're guessing, Simo added. The 5th shot required correction. A Draxali destroyer had ducked behind a barren planetoid, low gravity and slow spinning. Its assumption was basic. Line of sight blocked meant safety. Pavlov grinned, just slightly. Predict shadow curve. Give me 9 seconds post-emergence. Got it, Simo said. He waited. The destroyer emerged from the far side of the rock. Simo pulled the trigger. The slug curved with the planetoid's distortion, ricocheted off 2 microgravity wells, and speared the destroyer through its secondary reactor. The flash wasn't visible, but on the Draxali side, every sensor went white for 1/10 of a second. Every system blinked at once. Same result as the freighter. Command line is split. Their squad elements are reorganizing based on local decision-making, Macmillan noted. They've lost the core, Pavlov said. We're not just killing ships. We're killing coordination. For the 6th shot, Pavlov paused longer. Let's alter cadence. Give them dead air. How long? Simo asked. 2 minutes. Silva looked up. That's enough time for them to think they're safe, or that we broke. Exactly, Pavlov said. Simo stepped back from the firing cradle. The Thanatos chamber dimmed. No one spoke. Macmillan monitored. 1 minute passed, then another. And as predicted, a lone Draxali recon vessel crept forward, scanning aggressively. It moved past its assigned arc, violating formation for the first time since the operation began. Got you, Macmillan whispered. As the vessel pivoted to return to formation, Simo fired. Direct hit, mid-hull rupture. The ship folded in on itself like soft metal. Reaction? Pavlov asked. Macmillan scanned incoming comm bursts. Minimal. They were using that ship as a throwaway. But now they know we waited, and that means they're dealing with a mind, not a machine. And minds don't freeze. They choose. And minds adapt. Last one, Pavlov said. Target, forward assault frigate, rotating to align its weapons. Low angular velocity. Clean shot? Simo asked. Very. Silva confirmed. System stabilized. Go. Simo fired the 7th round. Impact. Precise. The frigate's midsection imploded. No secondary reaction. Just silence. The silence didn't end. It spread. Macmillan didn't look up from his console. Interception complete. Draxali data stream just spiked. "What are they saying?" Pavlov asked. He tapped his display. Encrypted bursts. Phrases include AI hostile, invisible kinetic weapon, and silent entity. Simo exhaled. "They're trying to name it." "They're trying to rationalize it," Macmillan corrected. "Which means they've lost control of the narrative inside the fleet." Pavlov looked at the tactical display. Small Draxali ships were forming a new line at the front. New formation. Light craft screening the vanguard. "They're preparing to bait us," she said flatly. "They're going to send in decoys," Macmillan agreed. Simo was already adjusting the scope, recalibrating. He didn't speak. He'd seen it before, and he knew exactly what was coming next. The decoys came fast. 4 Draxali scout craft darted into the black, scattering in a wide arc formation. Their propulsion trails flared erratically, intentionally mismatched, simulating panic or malfunction. Each one broadcasted active power signatures, mimicking the profile of larger ships. They weren't searching. They were bait. Clint Simo had them all lined up within seconds. Pavlov's voice cut through the chamber, precise. "Don't shoot. They want to know if we'll bite." Simo held his breath but didn't touch the trigger. The scout craft zigzagged across the void, flipping orientations, rotating on irregular axis points. From a distance, to an alien eye, they might have looked like potential targets breaking formation under stress. But to Simo, they were too clean, too orchestrated. No panic in the movements, just choreography. "They're not real," he said quietly. "They're trying to waste your ammunition," Pavlov confirmed, "and buy time for whatever comes next." At the edge of the field, a massive Draxali capital vessel detached from the rear line. Unlike the others, it didn't maneuver erratically. It moved with purpose, banking toward the outskirts of the dust belt. Its heat signature spiked. Core reactors building toward overload threshold. "Macmillan," Pavlov said. "Affirmative," he replied. "That ship is prepping a jump. Energy bloom confirms a Class 20 displacement field. Vector aims outside the system, full retreat." Simo adjusted the scope manually, bypassing auto-alignment. The capital ship filled his viewport. He could see heat ripples along its midsection. Escape thrusters primed. The silhouette of crew tunnels, even the shadow of its bridge ring. He didn't fire, not immediately. His finger hovered over the trigger, breath caught in his throat. This ship wasn't a decoy. It wasn't posturing. It was running, and it was full. "Clint," Pavlov said, softer than usual. He blinked once, then fired. The shot passed through the gravitational shell milliseconds before the jump sequence initiated. The Draxali ship had just reached the edge of spatial destabilization when the kinetic slug found its mark, slicing through the starboard reactor housing. For a split second, the ship existed in 2 realities. One attempting to fold space, the other collapsing into itself. The outcome wasn't destruction, it was disintegration. No explosion, just silence, and then static. On every Draxali vessel nearby, screens shattered into error, symbols flooding the interface, red spikes across navigation, orientation inverted. For 5 full seconds, their systems couldn't reconcile what had happened, like space itself had blinked. Simo sat motionless. The targeting display faded from red to gray. Silva let out a slow breath behind him, still leaning against the recoil compensator. Pavlov didn't speak. She just glanced toward Simo, eyes hard, but not cold. They had trained for this, but training didn't prepare you for that. Macmillan's voice broke the silence. Intercepted log fragment. Last Draxali broadcast from the jump ship. Initiating displacement. Target no longer detect him, and that's it. They didn't see it coming, Pavlov said. They never had the chance, Silva muttered. Macmillan kept reading, eyes scanning encrypted traffic with growing intensity. New comm clusters forming across the Draxali net. Scrambling codes, but I can parse the emotion. They're broadcasting key terms now. Which ones? Pavlov asked. Macmillan tapped a sequence into his console. A holographic display unfurled, showing fragmented glyphs, some still decrypting. But 3 were already clear. Retreat. Invisible. Unstoppable. Pavlov folded her arms. Now they know. That there's no safe distance, Macmillan added. That even jumping won't save them. Silva checked the stabilization readouts, his hands moving without thinking. We just destroyed the idea of escape. Simo hadn't moved. His hands remained on the cradle, but the trigger was untouched now. His eyes weren't on the screen. They were closed, not in hesitation, but in quiet calculation. He knew what that shot meant. Not tactically, symbolically. No system in the Draxali fleet would trust its own thresholds anymore. No officer would believe their ships could break away in time. Every jump sequence from now on would carry doubt. That seed, he'd just planted it. You okay? Pavlov asked. I'm fine, Simo replied. But it took him a moment. He sat straighter, hands back in motion. Adjusting for next vector, he said. Targeting solution realigned. We'll wait. More decoys incoming, Macmillan said. They're adapting, but now they're doing it scared. And scared commanders make mistakes, Pavlov replied. Simo didn't answer. He just recalibrated and waited. The feed cut in without ceremony. No dramatic intro, no preamble. Just raw telemetry from the Draxali fleet streaming across a secure line into Chamber 17 of the High Interstellar Council, deep beneath the surface of the fractured moon, Yorick Tal. The room, built like a sunken amphitheater, pulsed with cool blue illumination and nervous silence. Tiered seats formed a half-circle around a central hollow core that played the destruction on loop. No one spoke for the first 10 seconds. The last image frozen mid-transmission, an entire dreadnought vanishing during jump sequence. Silent. Absolute. High Consul Maro Verne finally shifted in his seat, his heavy carapace clinking softly as he leaned forward. A Kailari elder, his facial slits flared wide in what passed for discomfort among his species. If we act now, Verne said, they'll know we were watching, that we still care what happens in that sector. Across from him, Consul Idran Kell tilted his long avian head, feathers twitching with agitation. And if they know that, the humans may speak again. And I, for one, prefer the silence. A murmur rippled through the chamber, low, uncertain. Councillor Rel Marn, representing the Othari Union, cleared his throat. His amphibious skin glistened under the chamber lights. With respect, I propose a formal signal, a neutral alert. No interference, just acknowledgement that the event has been observed. Denied, snapped Kell immediately. They left the table. We don't remind the absent. Verne didn't flinch. You want to provoke them? No, Kell said. I want them to remain silent. If we send anything now, they'll know we're afraid. They already know, Marn muttered. Verne shifted again, eyes fixed on the data spike still glowing on the center display. This isn't escalation. This is precision. Cold. Calculated. Councillor Dren Halvan, youngest member in the chamber, leaned in. Permission to speak? Verne nodded. Halvan's voice was composed, but strained. We all remember what happened with the Varnari expedition, 72 cycles ago. They went dark, 3 hours after crossing into that sector. No wreckage. No distress call. No trace. They were warned, Kell said. We all were. Halvan looked around the chamber. We still are. A silence thicker than protocol settled. Verne finally spoke. No probes, no signals, no contact. We observe, nothing more. No votes were called. No opposition was voiced. The decision was made in the way only the council knew, by allowing fear to speak first. Back in the zone. Inside the Thanatos, silence lived between seconds. Nothing had moved in over 20 minutes. Simo remained perfectly still, his hand near the trigger, but not on it. The remaining Draxali ships had slowed. Their vectors flattened, angular momentum stalled. They weren't retreating. They weren't advancing. They were waiting. Pavlov sat with arms crossed, watching telemetry windows shrink and shift across her HUD. They're stalling, trying to regroup without looking like they're stalling. Macmillan spoke without looking up. One of the carriers deployed 2 sensor buoys. They're keeping them passive for now. Pavlov raised an eyebrow. Silent scouts? Near invisible emission, but they're there. Silva adjusted the lateral heat dampeners along the Thanatos recoil spine. They're afraid to talk. Even their machines are whispering. No one laughed. No one needed to. Pavlov tapped the side of her interface. They want to know if we'll answer. We won't, Simo said. His voice was level, but low. Not yet. Not ever, if it's up to the council, Macmillan muttered. Pavlov glanced over. You got something? He angled his monitor to face her. Intercepted council routing node, one of their shadow frequencies. Low priority traffic, non-diplomatic, non-public. And? Silva asked. Observation-only authorization confirmed from the Yorick chamber. No engagement, no acknowledgement. Multiple requests for probe deployments vetoed. Diplomatic signal proposals buried. Pavlov leaned forward. So they know what's happening. They've been watching since the first ship vanished, Macmillan said. They're not stopping us, because they're still not sure how far we'll go. Silva grunted. That's why no one ever stopped us from sealing the black zone. They wanted us isolated, until isolation became useful. Macmillan nodded. The silence wasn't punishment, it was permission. Outside, one of the sensor buoys activated a pulse, brief, directionless, a test. It lasted less than a second before vanishing. Negative contact, Pavlov confirmed. They didn't even look for us, just pinged the dark. Simo didn't move. He watched the telemetry fade. They're hoping the threat only responds to aggression, that if they stop fighting, it will stop hunting. And if it doesn't? Silva asked. Simo said nothing. The Thanatos remained quiet, powered, ready. Pavlov leaned back, her voice neutral. They're measuring our silence like we measured theirs a century ago. Macmillan kept scrolling through intercepted chatter. One of the Draxali flagged a new command code, rewriting fleet priority status to defensive preservation. Pavlov raised her eyebrows. That's new. It means, Macmillan said, they're preparing to lose. Simo watched a new ship shift formation, slowly, carefully, but he didn't fire. He waited. The moment snapped. Simo fired. The slug exited Thanatos like a whisper torn from a dying star, silent, smooth, deadly. The kinetic round, wrapped in gyroscopic stabilization coils, bore straight toward its intended mark, a mid-tier Draxali cruiser sliding just beyond the gravitational fringe of a fractured ice moon. The ship wasn't maneuvering. No shields, no evasion. It should have been easy. It wasn't. Half a second before impact, the moon convulsed. An internal tectonic shift, deep and slow, displaced mass under its crust. It was subtle, enough to shift local gravity fields by a fraction of a percent. But that fraction bent the slug's trajectory just enough to matter. The projectile veered off axis, glancing across the port side armor of the cruiser. It tore through panels and ruptured a secondary engine housing, but didn't reach the reactor core. The ship didn't explode. It staggered, bleeding plasma and debris, but remained intact. Missed the core, Pavlov said, her voice clipped, clinical. You calculated the desynchronization? No, Silva answered sharply, pushing off his workstation and moving fast. There was no desync. That distortion was spontaneous, unmapped. Moon shifted mass during flight path. Simo nodded. We fix it now. Warning lights strobed dimly above the railgun's heat dissipation array. Silva dropped to one knee at the base of the stabilization column, removing a panel manually. The Thanatos wasn't failing, but it was close to slipping out of sync. I'm dumping spin bleed into Ring 4, he said. That'll reduce strain on the firing core, but we'll lose 10% discharge stability for 30 seconds. Then we fire before 30, Pavlov said. Macmillan, Vector. Already tracking, Macmillan replied, his fingers flying across a fractured grid of Draxali signals. Cruiser's tilting away from formation. It's venting from starboard. I'm marking a pressure drop on its inner port reactor baffle. If we pierce from below, the structural breach will drive the collapse inward. Good, Pavlov said. Prepare dual separation munition, timing between charges, 8 milliseconds. Simo stepped away from the cradle briefly, resetting his posture. The last shot had left Thanatos slightly off axis. He adjusted the sight manually as Pavlov forwarded the updated firing solution. The chamber vibrated, not from sound, but from potential. Silva's voice came back. Stabilization nominal. Green across all rings. Charge rail reads clean. Ready, Pavlov confirmed. Simo aligned the scope, locked breath, and fired. The dual-phase round separated mid-flight, just as designed. The first slug hit low, puncturing weakened hull plating and forcing the Draxali ship to flex. The second slug entered on a delayed curve, drilling directly into the exposed inner core. The cruiser didn't stagger. It folded, imploded in silence, crushed from within by the vacuum its own structure couldn't hold. Clean, Pavlov said. Macmillan scanned the data stream. They're closer now. That cruiser was 6% inside safe buffer. If it had reacted half a second faster. It didn't, Simo said. We'll talk about it after the mission, not now. Silva leaned back against the frame of the recoil column, wiping a line of sweat from his jaw. Field's back in balance, but don't push two-phase shots back-to-back without letting me realign the rear dampeners. You'll get drift. Logged, Pavlov answered. Macmillan's tone shifted. Clint, new signal. Draxali command vessel. They're arming something. Power draw across multiple silos. Simo moved instantly to Macmillan's terminal. Define something, Pavlov said. Multi-stage projectile setup. Looks like a saturation pattern. They've opened 6 silos. No telemetry locks. Means they're launching blind. They're trying to hit everything, Silva said, eyes narrowing. No precision, Macmillan added. Just spread and pray. It's their first offensive action since they entered the zone. They're blind, Pavlov muttered. They don't know where we are. But they're still aiming, Macmillan said. And that changes the equation. The room went still. On the main display, the Draxali command cruiser rotated. Slowly, deliberately. Its launch bays unfolded in sequence, jagged and raw like broken ribs exposing a desperate heart. For hours, the fleet had died in silence. Now, silence had grown teeth. They were ready to fire, and that made them dangerous. The launch bays snapped open. The Draxali command cruiser twisted hard on its axis, turning its dorsal spine toward the black. It bled heat signatures across its hull, 6 glowing vents igniting like artificial novas. A heartbeat later, the missiles launched. Not 1, not 2. 6 separate gravitational warheads tore into the void with no visible targeting alignment. They didn't aim at anything. They hoped to hit everything. Launch detected, Macmillan shouted, eyes flashing as he pulled telemetry from a dozen collapsing vectors. 6 silos, no lock. They're firing blind. Pavlov stepped forward instantly. Clint, intercept. Do not let them hit the grid. Simo didn't respond. His body had already moved. Thanatos adjusted pitch automatically as he slid back into the cradle, hands locked to the controls, eyes tracking the scattered trajectories. First missile, high arc, drifting toward Sector 34. Lock. Fire. The round intercepted before the missile passed into relay range. It vaporized mid-space. No heat bloom, no echo, just subtraction. Second missile, low and fast, spinning on a crooked axis. Simo narrowed the scope, nudged the calibration manually. Fired. Another void left behind. Third missile, 200,000 kilometers wide, cutting toward the remnants of an old orbital ring. Human-made, long silent, but still carrying sensor reflectors. Macmillan barked, "That one's heading for echo field debris. If it hits, they'll see the echo spike." Simo didn't blink. He snapped the reticle down by 1 micron. Fired. The missile was gone before it crossed the inner perimeter. 3 more. Thanatos whined softly as the 4th round exited the chamber. It took out 2 warheads in tandem. One ruptured, the second lost calibration and detonated harmlessly in a controlled microburst. Only 1 missile remained. It spun erratically, leaking field energy, its shell destabilizing. Its path was chaotic, almost missed by the autoscanners, but Simo spotted it arcing toward the low-mass ridge on the outermost edge of the human exclusion zone. Old comboys were buried under that region, forgotten by most. But not Simo, not Pavlov. He locked, fired, final missile down. Silence reclaimed the void. Silva's voice cracked into the stillness. Outer grids holding, no echo, no emissions. We're still invisible. Macmillan's fingers moved in constant rhythm, eyes catching every variance. They weren't attacking, they were probing, trying to trigger backscatter, force us to move. They failed, Pavlov said. Simo didn't look up. His gaze had already shifted to the source. The Draxali cruiser, the one that fired, was still turning. Not toward them, not away, just drifting. Like it didn't know what to do next. Simo didn't wait. He fired. The kinetic slug carved through the Draxali ship's central spine, a direct blow from dorsal to ventral. The hull resisted for half a second, then buckled. No detonation, just collapse. The bridge cracked in 2, spilling pressurized corridors into vacuum. Systems blinked once, then died. Pavlov didn't move. No one did, until Macmillan exhaled. That was their command ship. Was, Simo echoed. On screen, 2 remaining vessels twitched, like prey catching scent. One jumped to full power and tried to break vector westward. A corvette, fast, angular, built for escort runs. The other, a light frigate, spun on its central axis, exposed reactor coils flaring. Simo picked the corvette first. No mercy. He fired. The ship folded in on itself before its hyperdrive could prime. Gone. That left one. The frigate hung in place. No motion, no transmission. Its shields flickered low. One engine sputtered, leaking ion trails like steam. Simo adjusted the sight. The reticle locked. His finger hovered. 3 seconds passed. Then 4. He let go of the trigger and stepped back. The cradle lights dimmed. Click. The last Draxali frigate turned slowly. No formation to return to. No command structure to follow. Just silence behind it, and survival ahead. Its jump drive blinked to life. Weak, damaged, but functional. The ship escaped. Macmillan sat forward, watching closely. They'll talk. No, Pavlov replied, arms folded. They'll tremble first. Inside the fleeing vessel's core, a transmission protocol activated. It wasn't encrypted. It wasn't a virus. It carried no weapon, just memory, a sequence, a full record. Every strike from Thanatos, every disappearance, every impact vector, every ship lost. The Draxali didn't receive a threat. They received proof. They didn't see a warning. They saw a ledger, a clean, unspoken message. This space isn't defended by fleets. It is guarded by silence, and silence does not ask permission. As the ship cleared the last perimeter, its failing comms burst once, just static, and then vanished into hyperspace. Thanatos went dark again. The next shot wouldn't come for hours, maybe days, but he'd be ready, like always. Hey there, space human. I'm really curious about your thoughts on this video. Drop a quick comment and let me know what's on your mind, or just say hi if you prefer. Either way, I'd love to hear from you. Oh, and one last thing. Every great soldier knows that to survive and become a hero, taking care of yourself is key. So before you go, check the pinned comment. Trust me, it's important. And I've chosen another video for you to watch. Just click the card here, or here if you want the whole playlist. See you there.